Welcome to our third keynote with Terri Cole. If everybody can please look to your chat at the bottom of your screen and change your settings so that you are on all panelists and attendees. That way you can share where you're from. Please say hello. Tell us your name, where you're from. And as Terri's speaking, please ask your questions. We're going to do our best to have her answer all of your questions. Please tell us where you're from as you're joining the chat.
I want to know if New York is in the house. I mean, I'm in the house. Does that count? Come on in. Oh,
Anna from Edmonton. Welcome, Anna.
I can see the chat actually on my phone.
Krista from Calgary. I'm from Calgary originally. Yay, Krista. And Crystal from Calgary. Brandy from Toronto. All Canadians so far. Anyways, everybody, there's people from all over the world. It's pretty amazing. Katrina from Portland. Welcome.
Portland's in the house, right on.
Please make sure that you are, if you've just joined us, you change your settings so that you're on the chat, you choose all panelists and attendees so that we can see the chat as a group.
Hi, Monica.
And I can read your questions.
Right on from Toronto is here. I got Ashley from Fresno.
Ryan, I'm not seeing any chats. I mean, I'm seeing where people are from. Yeah, so they're not asking questions.
Can you hear me though?
Yes. Loved your week, Terri. Crystal says it was an amazing week.
Thanks, Crystal.
So much good content. We're going to get started in about 3 minutes. So please continue to tell us where you're from and say hello. And on the chat, if you'd like to ask Terri a question while she's speaking tonight, please write down your question.
Hey, Megan from Long Beach. Jersey's in the house, I saw you. I'm from Jersey too. You know it. All right, everyone's coming on. I see lots of people joining. I'm so excited.
I am having a few technical difficulties. Oh no, something's going on with my computer. I can hear you there, Terri.
Hi, Megan. I see you. Don't worry. I'll welcome people. Hey, Katie from California. Lots of Cali gals. Also love your entire wardrobe. Thanks, if that's me. Or Robin, you say thanks. Could be you. I feel like I've had the same wardrobe for the last 10 years. Because once you like something, you know, either I keep buying the same thing in a different color. My husband's like, don't you already have that? I'm like, maybe I do, but I like it. I want it again. I want it one more time. Oh, I cannot hear you now. Same, you like what you like. That's great. Ah, it's so true. And only gets worse as you age, not to say I'm old or anything, but I'm just saying. Oh yeah, but Robin, you meant to not hear. You meant for us not to hear you, right? Robin, you're
Yes.
you're on. Yes, I knew it.
You know, I will adjust the technical difficulties on my end, but it is 4 o'clock. So we'll get started, and I'm going to open our call. Good evening, everyone. My name is Robin Ducharme, and I'm the founder of Real Love Ready. And I'm so grateful to have each of you join us for this special presentation with our guest, Terri Cole. I do want to express gratitude to the original caretakers of this land that I call home in Victoria, BC. I appreciate the Coast Salish people and those who have taken care of the land and waters that we live and work and play on. And I'm so incredibly happy to introduce our keynote, Boundary Boss, the amazing, the brilliant Terri Cole. Terri is a New York-based licensed psychotherapist, relationship expert, and founder of Real Love Revolution and Boundary Bootcamp. Her 2 female empowerment courses, reaching women in over 25 countries worldwide. In her previous life, Terri worked as a talent agent for actors and supermodels. She was a self-proclaimed type A overachiever with zero balance and no inner peace. Fortunately, she followed her heart and the voice asking her to change course. Terri is a master at combining practical psychology, Eastern mindfulness practices, plus harnessing the power of intention to help her clients create sustainable, positive behavioral change, true transformation. She empowers over 100,000 women weekly through her published articles and blog posts, therapeutic meditations, online courses, and her popular podcast, The Terri Cole Show. Terri has dedicated her life to helping people build nurturing relationships. She says, "You are the reason I do what I do. I am mesmerized by your potential and your willingness to grow, change, and work to create relationships and a life that thrills you." Terri, we are thrilled to have you with us tonight.
Thanks, Robin. I'm so excited. This week has been so fun, and this is the culmination. We're like having a boundary party right now. Boundary self-love party, I guess we'll call it. I'm really psyched to be here. Thank you for having me. Oh, thanks, Sherry Lynn. I love you guys too. You know I do. So you want me to just take it away, dear?
Yes, please.
She's like, please do. All right, Lady Loves. What we've been doing this whole week is basically exploring the connection between boundaries and self-love, right? How are these things actually connected? So my talk tonight, I'm going to give you some key shifts, internal shifts that you can make, things to think about, points to ponder as you continue on this journey of transformation towards better boundaries and towards more self-love, and how those two things are connected. So that's what we're going to do for the first 30 minutes or a little bit less. And then we're going to take your questions. Some questions have already come in, and we're going to take questions from the chat. I love, Q&A is my fave, so maybe we'll save a teeny bit more time for that. So I'm just going to move into what we're actually talking about. And Robin, am I supposed to be on the screen? Because on my screen, you're on my screen. So am I supposed to be there, or are you supposed to be there? Are you guys good? Can you see me? Just tell me that. As long as they can.
You are on the screen.
Okay, great. Then I guess just because I'm a panelist, I just wanted to make sure. Good. I love it. They're all so helpful. They're like, we got you, don't worry. Okay. So the first thing we're doing is I want you to get real. And this is part of what I was challenging you to do this week about the state of your boundaries. Are they good? Are they bad? So much of what we did this week was sort of taking an inventory. Like, a lot of times when we talk about boundaries, people feel overwhelmed. They're like, I don't even know. Or you have all of these myths. If I have good boundaries, that means I have to be a bitch. That means I have to be mean. I have to confront everyone in the world if I have good boundaries, which isn't true at all. But the thing that people don't think about is, what do you need to know in order to know what boundaries you need? You need to know yourself. You need to know what's not working. You need to know what your pain points are in your life. What relationships do you have repeated issues with? If I asked you right now, I am asking you right now, bring to mind who in your life you have the most boundary problems with. Can you please just drop it into the chat? Dawn said, my daughter totally pushed my boundaries. Okay. Who has a mother? Who has a father, a brother? We got a lot of exes. Yes. Moms, lots of exes. Boyfriend. Did someone say their dog? Family, roommate, a lot of roommates. So it isn't like you don't know where. Does my self count? Yes, it does. And don't worry, we're going to talk about internal boundaries, Mama. I got you. It does actually count. And that is a really important part of having good boundaries. And where self-love comes in is internal boundaries, which is basically boundaries with yourself. So we will get to that. But all of you know where you need help. All of you know where you need to put your attention. You might just not know how to do it. So getting real about where you need it. So we're writing down, we're doing inventories. You guys already have all of this. That's the beginning. Understanding, right? So the next thing we're going to move to is understanding why it's hard. So it's really easy. I find this in my therapy practice and in my coaching groups and courses where women, we just want to be so mean to ourselves all the time. Anybody? We want to be like, why am I still struggling with this? Like, what is wrong with me? It was so long ago. Like, even with parents, we're like, I'm grown up. I'm like in my 40s, my 50s, my 30s. So let's just start with stop expecting to know something that not only nobody taught you, right? Not only did they not teach you, because that's true, but we were all pretty much, and you Canadians, probably even worse than us Americans, or at least as bad, but probably worse. We were actively praised to not have boundaries. What was more important than being nice? Anything? Can you think of? Be nice. This is like this crazy, most important quote unquote virtue, which honestly, I don't even think it's really a virtue, because the truth is when we're being nice, the way that we were all taught to be nice, what we're really exactly, to be a good girl, says Robin. That's who here wasn't taught to be a good girl. I think we all were, but what that translates to. So in childhood, that is pretty adaptive, right? We're like, oh, I want to get approval from my parents. They tell me to be a good girl. Or if you're in a dysfunctional or chaotic situation, you learn how to avoid the wrath of someone, right? By being very dialed in. But trust me, it's not because you're asserting yourself, how you feel, what you want, being truthful. We're just like working the system, right? We're like managing people left and right in our lives. So your downloaded boundary blueprint is basically what you learned in the home that you grew up in. So what did you learn about that this week? What did you learn from your family of origin? Just tell me. Did you learn that having boundaries makes you mean? Did you learn to, kids should be seen and not heard, be a good girl, turn that frown around? One of my clients told me that her mother used to always say to her that, rather than being like, what's wrong? Are you okay? The mother didn't even care. The mother was like, I just want to check that box. Other people's feelings matter more, right, Krista? We were all taught to prioritize. Yes, I put other people's emotional states above my own, Lizzie. Yep. We were taught no one will like me if I set boundaries. Yeah, girls shouldn't speak all the time. Ah, says Shayna. My views were confrontational. Oh yeah, Shauna, of course. Your views are confrontational if the other people don't like it. I mean, is that not a crock of shit? We know that it is. So, somewhere down deep, Megan said, I don't want to rock the boat. None of us want to rock the boat. And even now, and I'm writing a friggin' book. I wrote a book called Boundary Boss. It's not coming out until next April, and I still would prefer not to rock the boat. But preferring not to, but doing it when I need to, is different than being so averse to rocking the boat that we abandon ourselves rather than rock the boat. So before you get all of this stuff from the basement of your mind, right? So this like your unconscious mind is where so much of this stuff is. We need to move it to the main part of the house. And this is what the downloaded boundary blueprint is about. So how many of you would say that your mother was a boundary boss? Anybody? Would anyone say their mother was a boundary boss and taught you to be a boundary boss? Any person on here? No, of course not. Oh, someone said yes. We had one yes and all the no's. Because most people, and I've been doing this for about 23 years, most women in my practice and what I've taught, what we learn is not to speak our mind if someone won't like it. We're really about not upsetting the apple cart. And that is what we're unlearning. And that's what this week has been about. And that's what this talk is about. And that's what my book is about. And that's what my boundary bootcamp course is about that comes out in September. It's all of it is before we can really master and learn anything, we need to reveal what is in your downloaded boundary blueprint. So hopefully you now, after this week, have a better idea of what you learned. And all of us learned, we learned it in a unique way. But wherever you have problems with boundaries, we really can follow the dots backwards to the original experiences or the original learning situation. And this is not to blame our parents. And I think that it's really important that we just go on record as saying, like, not at all, not what we're doing. And yet, we still have to speak truthfully about why we are the way we are. So once we establish it, it's what we learned from our family of origin, we can move on. It's not my mother's responsibility for me to become a boundary boss in my grown-up life, right? Just like it's not yours or your parents. And it's not even about fault. It's about understanding that you couldn't know this, right? You couldn't know this if no one taught it. It's like a language all its own. It's like expecting to just wake up and know this, or think that you could wish hard enough or think about it enough. You have to actually learn. It's an actual language. So in the downloaded boundary blueprint, some of the questions are about who had the power in your family. Did people, how did people manage anger and conflict? So I grew up in a family that didn't know how to do that. So my parents didn't. So I learned, and we weren't allowed to be angry. So I learned that anger was bad and that definitely I should not be overtly expressing anger about anything for any reason, pretty much. So what happens? Do you think that that anger goes away? Anybody? You think it disappears? No, of course it does not. But what happens? Well, we naturally will transmute it to something. At least I transmuted it to being upset. It was okay to cry. It was okay to be upset. So it's not really how you feel, right? Because how I felt, I would be filled with rage about something, but instead I knew I could say I was upset. But I mislearned my emotions that way. I grew up terrified of other people's anger, but my own, definitely my own included. And this is something that it took years of unlearning to be able to be like, what, anger is one of the essential emotions that I don't actually have the power, neither do my parents or your parents, to tell us not to have it, Monica said I was told it's not ladylike. How overrated is being ladylike? Please, seriously, just how about human-like? Can we want to be human, like fully formed, evolved humans rather than ladylike? We need to be soft. Everything has to be pleasing to all the other people. But you do that long enough and you know what it becomes? Super unpleasing to us. So hopefully in looking at the downloaded boundary blueprint stuff, you get an idea of why you are the way you are. And you got to give yourself, now we're moving down to the third point, which is you got to give yourself permission to become a boundary boss. You have to give yourself permission to prioritize how you feel, your preferences. Do you even know your preferences? So many of us don't, because we're so busy trying to make sure that everyone else has their preferences fulfilled. I mean, my life was trying to be everything to everyone. And I didn't care that it was at the expense of myself in my 20s, because I was so afraid of the confrontation or the conflict that I just had no way of knowing how to deal with, that I did it the only ways that I knew how. How would that be? Passive aggressively, right? Anyone ever send a passive aggressive smiley in a text message? I know you have, just admit it. Where, you know, the person says, oh, we're gonna, they change the meet time after you've already left your apartment. And you're like, okay, Betty, even though I planned my life around the original time that you said, no problem, see you soon, seething smiley face, right? Or you say something kind of bitchy or straightforward, and then you're like, love you, right? We want to undo it. There's this desire we want to draw the boundary, and then we're so afraid we want to take the boundary back. And listen, I'm doing this with a bit of humor because I hope that you guys can have a little bit of a sense of humor about it, because I'm not talking about just you. Obviously, I'm talking about me too. And someone is, I think you guys are saying you hate it when people do that, because I really do too. I just want to be like, hey, even though I used to do it, so part of me understands, but I do want to say, hey, and I do say now, hey, listen, I'm getting a vibe from you that you have something to say. I so appreciate and prefer that you just say what it is. It would be great. I would appreciate it. And I had actually one of my grown sons said something to me the other day. We're having a conversation about something, and whatever it is he told me, but he said that it hurt I said something or did something that hurt his feelings. And he said, and then when you called me back, because I felt hurt, it made me want to withdraw and not tell you what I was going to tell you. And I was like, I felt so incredibly loved. And he's like in massive therapy now. So it's so great. Like, I just love that he's having all these things, even though, of course, some of those things are going to be realizations about me. And that's okay. Because, hey, I mean, if you're a parent, you've already found, so just accept it. It's fine. There's something you're doing wrong that your kids are going to talk about in 15 years from now. And you just have to be sorry for the ways you failed them, and pray that they do it all better than you. Pray. That's, as parents, this is just our prayer. I hope you felt loved. I made a million mistakes. I love you. Yes, please forgive me for all the ways that I failed you, because I definitely did. But I felt so incredibly loved by him telling me that. And I said to him, and I actually started crying. I said, Al, this makes me feel so important to you and so loved. And I just want to say thank you. And please always tell me, because he was someone that would always kind of tell me what, I always felt like he was telling me what he thought I wanted to hear. And I always knew, because I'm an empath and I'm a cognitive intuitive and I'm a therapist. Like, I always knew. I was like, he's just saying that. And so I said, we've had conversations where I've been able to say to him, listen, I love you, but I feel like you want to please me too much. So half the things you say, I think, well, there's about a 50% chance that'll happen. I'd rather you just tell me the truth so I can count on you all the time, right? It's okay to say no. You don't have to do the things I want all the time. Have I ever been super punishing to you, Al? Honestly, have I? And he's like, no. I'm like, okay, so like, just tell the truth. Anyway, but long way around the barn to get back to, we have these fears that tell us that drawing boundaries are like blocks to intimacy and to better relationships and to deep communication. And the truth is, boundaries are the bridges to those things. And speaking truthfully, when I talk about boundaries, I'm also talking about speaking truthfully, because it's an essential pillar of having healthy boundaries. You can't have them. They don't exist if you don't speak them into being, because a lot of the times, sure, we can use body language sometimes, and there's other ways, right? We don't need to have all of this like straight up honesty with, like, Bob from The Office, right? Like, we can just avoid Bob from The Office if we don't feel like talking with him in the morning. We can keep walking. We can be like, what's up, Bob? And just go straight to our, even if we know he's going to try to corner us and talk. You can use your body language. You can use your facial expression to basically broadcast how you feel and what you want. If he doesn't get it, if he's like, no, wait a minute, I have a story I gotta tell you about Taco Tuesday or whatever the hell, you just gotta be like, no, Bob, I've got to get to work, man, I'm sorry. Or whatever. Like, we'll come, don't worry, I've got a bunch of scripts for you, because a bunch of questions came in about that. We'll come up with better ways to say it. But my point is, just like anything else in life, boundaries and the way that you handle them will be different in your intimate relationships, with people who have power over you like a boss, with people who you have power over like subordinates, with friends, with frenemies, right? They're all going to be different, but in all of those situations, the requirement is that you know how you feel. You know what you want. That is a requirement. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and she was like, just tell me about this guy that she works with. And she's like, I kind of think, and she's funny because she's kind of old school. She's like, he's a male chauvinist. I was like, dude, I have not heard that phrase since 1978, but okay. There's a lot of other phrases now that we say, but cool. And then she's like, no, I mean, I feel bad for saying that. I feel like I was like, Dee, why do you feel bad for saying that? You have a right to your experience. In your experience, is he biased against you and treats you differently because of your gender? And she was like, definitely. I was like, then he's a male chauvinist. Why can't you say that? But it's like, even then, someone who's doubting their experience, feeling bad for saying that. Now, I'm not saying she should tell someone else he's a male chauvinist, but she needs to handle him. We talked about it today, language to use, to be able to say, I'd like to make a simple request that you not call me out in meetings, that you not ask me to sit next to you like you own me. All right, maybe we didn't put that last part in, but you get the point. Is that the reason I told the story about my friend is because she's like doubting, even with me, one of her best friends, she's doubting her right to have her actual experience, right? And we have to know who we are and what we want. And that is the beginning of this entire process. So that point 3 was give yourself permission to assert yourself, your priorities, your preferences. To do that, you got to know them, okay? That's part of what we did this week. The next point I want to make is you have to take care of the little kid within you, right? Yes, Ramos is doubting our feelings, yes. And doubting our right to them, right? And we're going to get to that in some of the questions that I answered, where we feel like we have to like convince these mother effers that we've got a right to the way that we feel or to draw our boundary. We don't have to convince anyone of crap. We don't. And when we do convince, it really weakens our position. But you're going to learn, don't worry. It's the truth. So your priority, your preference, realize that you have to give yourself permission to assert yourself. And you can start, don't worry, I'm going to guide you to start with low priority people. Like, we're not going to start with the most important and scariest ones. If you have a narcissistic mother, we're not starting with her. We're starting with your hairdresser. We're starting with the mail person. We're starting with, the frenemy. We're starting with the mom group domineering bully, right? Those people, because they're not going to like forever impact your life. So we just do it slow. So you start to get your sea legs kind of where you're like, okay, I'm getting there. I think I can do it. And I'm going to give you tonight, you're going to get a bunch of simple scripts that you can use in sort of any situation. Okay, moving on to the fourth one. What I said is take care of your little kid. We don't have time. We're not going to do it. Get into the child within stuff. Some of you, I think, are familiar with this. Why I say that is because a lot of times the boundary issues that we have, or our feelings of lack of worthiness, they originated in experiences from childhood that really still need our attention. And so part of it is really seeing, did I really process those things that happened in my life? Have I talked about them? If you had childhood trauma or abuse in any way and you haven't gotten professional help, you need to. You need to unpack that, not with an online situation, with a real situation, because that stuff does follow you. And there's no online course. If you have untreated childhood trauma, that's good enough to help you. You need someone, even if it's virtual therapy, you need a trauma expert to help you with that, because that stuff follows us forever. It gets frozen in time and it really does impact. But you don't have to have had childhood trauma to be traumatized by the prospect of drawing boundaries. Trust me, you don't. But I did want to just say that. So understanding that there's an adult you and a child you, and treating yourself with the same compassion and love that you do children right now in your life that you love. Because I find that we can be really not nice to ourselves. Anybody have like an inner mean committee? You're like, not nice. saying not nice things, to calling ourselves not nice names, thinking we deserve bad things. Well, that's what you get. That's like my worst one. I don't do it hardly at all anymore. But when I do slip back into old behavior, that's the one that comes to mind. Well, you know what? You get what you deserve because you did whatever. And I'm like, listen, no one in my life ever said that to me, right? That is all me, just being mean to me for whatever reason. And I know that I'm not unique because I've been a psychotherapist for women just like me for 23 years. So I know that you guys have this experience too. Sometimes it's an internalized voice of someone else. Sometimes it's just our crazy mind being mean to us, no reason to do so. But it's important to get a hold of that because that can also get in the way of drawing boundaries. Yeah, why are we so much meaner to ourselves than anyone else is or than other people? Oh, I don't know, perfectionism, overfunctioning. Sometimes we've internalized the punitive voice of a punitive parent. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, but it doesn't have to be that way. If you really decide that you're going to fall madly and deeply in love with yourself, that voice starts to just fade away. And then when it comes, you're like, shut up. Like, it's so weird when you actually get it. You're like, who are you, you rotten thing? Forget it. I'm not listening to you. All right, the last point, because then I want to be able to get to all of our questions that I want to make, is about learning the language of healthy boundaries. And that is a very particular and specific language. So, of course, I teach it in my course. Of course, I'm writing about it in my book. But I'm also, in the questions that came in, I'm also answering a question and giving you a whole bunch of things. So I can either do that now or I can wait till I answer that question. Rob, what do you want me to do?
I think we'll go to questions, Terri, whenever you
Great.
Are ready.
I'm ready because you guys, I will hit the scripts when I get to that question.
And I would encourage, please, everybody on the call to send questions if you have not already submitted through the chat. And I'm going to be reading as Terry's giving answers, and I can ask your live questions as well.
Right
so
on.
the first question is coming from Lacey in BC. I find by the time I work up the courage to set a boundary or communicate a need, I've waited too long, and the communication comes out quickly and in a pile of emotions. Sometimes it's received as too blunt or harsh, as if it's coming out of the blue to the person on the other end, and they can feel upset by the delivery of the boundary. Can you provide more strategies that could help me set the boundary sooner to avoid that emotionally charged space?
I sure can. But part of it is we have to, we can't turn back the hands of time. So we're going to start where you are. You've got to, and in the process of this week, hopefully we've done this, get clarity on the problematic relationships in your life. There are people that you have been building a case against or that you've been sort of collecting grievances against. We all have that file cabinet in our mind and we're like, yeah, another one goes in Bob's file of what an idiot he is. Like, they don't know it. If we're just filing, they don't know it. So I can't go back in time and have you do this with people that you've already built resentment with, but I want you to know who they are. So if you did that inventory that we talked about, that you guys got on, hold on, I asked her to tell me when it was. I think week 5, exercise 3 it was, I believe. You went through a whole bunch of questions, and if you haven't, you should, because this will give you clarity on who the next people that you might explode like a volcano on might be, right? So that's the first thing. Another thing is dialing into your feelings. You said, how can you know it sooner? You've got to be dialed into your feelings. Any person who's in treatment with me learns how to meditate. I teach them. I'm a meditation teacher. Why is that? Why do I care about meditation? What does that have to do with your mental health? Well, it has everything to do with your mental health, because meditation, if you can rock a dedicated practice of even 10 to 20 minutes a day, you will buy about 2 seconds of reaction time or response time. So that means that when you're starting to get angry about something, you're feeling constricted, instead of running away from it, like you might be doing right now and making it okay, poo-pooing it, pushing it under the rug, you might give yourself a minute and go, Bob, that whole thing that just happened right there, that didn't feel good to me. So can we talk about this? I'd like to make a simple request that if you have a problem with something with me, that you don't do it in the group setting and that you just come to me directly. I would feel really respected and appreciated if you could do that, right? So you learn the simple language so you know how to do it, but you have to feel the feeling. It's you are making the decision. You get constricted and you're making the decision to file it in the cabinet or say something. And if you don't want to say it in that moment, you can write it down and be like, you know what, the next day when you go to work, hey, Bob, I was thinking about what happened yesterday in the meeting. Do you have a minute? I want to talk about it. You just do it. Like, you guys, you know, it feels like impossible now, like it did for me before I could do it, where you're like, oh my God, no, I'm not doing that because then Bob's going to say this or he's going to do that. Nope. What Bob does, what anyone else does is their side of the street. The only thing you have to worry about is your side of the street. So if you can rock a meditation or a mindfulness practice, you will be more dialed into when you're feeling angry, and then promise yourself that you're not going to let any grass grow under any resentments. That's it. So that's my answer to that question.
I love that answer. Terri, there's Danny on our call tonight asking, do you have advice on setting a boundary with an ex who I still love and want connection with, even though I know it isn't healthy for me, because he keeps popping in and out of my life, telling me he loves me and cares and misses me, but is not available and not showing up in a way that is consistently loving or respectful?
Right, because it's your job to protect you, mama. It's your job. So he's doing what is in best for him, which is having you around when he wants to, feeling your beautiful sunshine when it suits him, not really caring about when you might need some sunshine. So you have to decide, is that enough for you? And if the answer is no, then you need to make a clean break. You want him still in your life because you hope you're going to get back together. You have a better shot at getting back together with him if you cut ties with him and say, hey, I love you, but this is unhealthy for me, so I'm going to block you for now. I always say clean break. Let's not be friends on anything. Let's block social media. I feel like I need a clean break. If you have a change of heart, you know, I mean, I would be open to something that isn't this. And I know that's hard, but the truth is you are colluding with his bad behavior by staying in it. You are literally being like, this works for me, even though it doesn't, right? So it's your job to make him respect you or let him go. Why do you want someone who doesn't love you? Right? Why do you want someone who can't love you consistently or love you the way you deserve to be loved? You know? So sending you so much strength because I know you can do it. And I have had clients who've been in this situation. They cut ties with the person. 8 months later, the person's like, biggest mistake of my life. How are they going to know it's the biggest mistake of their life? If they still get your sunshine all the time, whenever they need it, they're not going to. And it's not like the old adage, like, why is the farmer going to buy the cow if he gets the milk for free? Because you're not a cow and you're not something to be purchased. And that's a terribly sexist, you know, analogy. But there is a point of you valuing yourself enough to be like, this isn't enough. And even saying to him, hey, you know, I love you, but this isn't enough and this isn't what I want. So if you change your mind at some point later, I may or may not be around, but for now, I need to, what's best for me is to go no contact so that I can move on with my life. Because I'm not willing to settle for the crumbs that you're willing to throw me. You know what I mean? I mean, you can leave that part out, but I'm feeling protective of you right now, Danny. I'm feeling mad at your ex-boyfriend.
There's a question from Zoltan from Oman asking, how can you handle a situation when your newly set boundaries are creating a conflict?
Hey, man, get a little bit more comfortable with conflict, babe. Here's the thing. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's all right. Like, everything is not as life and death as the child within each of us thinks it is. It really isn't. They cannot like it. So have faith if you hold the line on a new boundary. And if you do it lovingly, if the person's like, well, I'm upset and you've changed and I don't like it, you could say, I haven't really. I still love you. I'm just not doing that thing that you want me to do. And so you're mad. And I see that. But I'm still here. And I still love you. I'm still not doing the thing you want me to do that I don't want to do, though. So we just stay firm. Oh my God, I had this greatest, was this where I was going to tell that story? Oh, it's down below, but it's fine. I'm going to tell you a really quick story from someone in my I have a membership community, and she took my boundary boot camp course. And so she made this boundary with her mother, who was very intrusive and all of these things. And her mother, tortured her about the boundary, but she did exactly what I just described. I love you. I'm still not doing the thing you want me to do, and blah, blah. And it's a year later, and she's like, you are not going to believe it. My mother is now, it told my niece, who's having the same issue with my sister. So you get it? The grandma is telling the granddaughter, Jamie, she did that to me, and it was really hard, but I have to tell you, I really respect her for it, and it really worked, and our relationship is better than it's ever been because she did that. So I think you should do that with the mom. Like, do you understand? So it can work out where the people actually, you are standing up for that relationship by drawing that boundary and not abandoning yourself and then being resentful or acting like a martyr or blaming them for your unhappiness, because all of those things happen too. So we can draw boundaries and stay lovingly connected to the people in our life. Absolutely. So that was my answer.
Wonderful. Shauna from Victoria is asking, given we all have a boundary blueprint, how do we engage respectfully in a boundary discussion with someone from whom we've inherited our say,
Speaking of
mother,
mothers,
father, someone who is a repeated boundary transgressor? How do we stay in a healthy relationship with them, particularly aging parents who may not be able or willing to put in the work?
well, here's the thing. They don't have to be willing to do anything for you to effectively draw a boundary with them. You just have to be okay with them not liking it, and that's hard. You got to be uncomfortable for a bit. Stay connected. I love you, Mom. I'm just not doing that. Whatever the issue may be, you have to have the courage to let the chips fall where they may, from the original boundary blueprint offender. And it can be tempting to want to convince them that you have a right to the boundary, or to persuade them. You want them to understand. You want them to think you're doing the right thing. My feeling is, as long as you know you're doing the right thing, you can love your parents and not allow them to trample on your boundaries. You actually can. They can say, you're being disrespectful. I said to someone, you know what? I'm actually not, but I understand that you feel that way, and you can keep saying that, and that actually doesn't make it true. I'm incredibly respectful of you, and I love you. I'm just not doing what you want, and you're mad. So I understand that, but you continuing to say I'm being disrespectful actually doesn't make it so. I'm really not. So let's get clear about what you're really mad that you're not getting your way. And I still love you. So I'm still not doing whatever that thing is that you want me to do. So you see what I mean?
Yeah. Anna from Edmonton is asking, when your partner consistently violates your boundaries that involve your sense of safety due to PTSD and emotional trauma, and engages in their addiction regularly, how do you stay in that relationship?
But why would you stay in that relationship? You may love them. They've got problems. They're violating your boundaries. And an addict. Go to Al-Anon. Get some skills yourself. Understand why you're in the position you are, because there's a reason. Trust me, we all have our downloaded boundary blueprint, right? We all have it. But don't sacrifice your one and only beautiful, amazing life thinking that you can save him or anyone, because you can't. It's literally impossible. It's not possible. And you could throw your life. If this person wants to get into therapy with you, if they are willing to get help, if they will get trauma help, if they will get addiction help, if they will do anything to get help, then okay. So I'm not just saying it's easy and get out and not being flippant about it. I'm really not. The reality is, if they are not willing to get help, you cannot help them. And it is your decision whether you go down with the ship that is definitely going down, or whether you believe that you deserve to have a life of your own. Not on that ship. Because it's an illusion. If you think that you can save that person, and I know, because I tried, trust me. I've had many, many traumatized addicts in my life prior to getting healthy myself. So I might be a little hot because I know from whence I speak. And I also don't want you going down with the ship, because you have a beautiful, unique, amazing life that it's your job to live that life, you know? So I hope you heard that with the love that I sent that with.
Jane from Florida is asking, I wish I always knew with 100% certainty how I felt. Unfortunately, I do not. When dating, I'm often unsure how I feel about a man, and I end up being indirect and vague in my communications, most likely because I'm unclear in my own mind. How do I set boundaries that will help define the relationship when I don't even know yet how I feel about someone?
What I got from this, I had a feeling in it that it was different than what this question was. I had this, I can't explain what happens when I read this, but I got this, like, this physical impression of something. So I'm just going to tell you. Knowing yourself, like, a lot of times, confusion is like code word for fear or not wanting to know what we kind of know. So when you say you don't know how you feel, I wonder, are you looking to the person? Are you looking to be like, how do they feel about me before I know how I feel about them? Like, do you think that that's happening? Or are you afraid that if you feel a particular way, this person is going to be upset or mad? Like, do you feel like you have the disease to please when it comes to dating? You know what I mean? Like, just seeking sort of the approval of this other person. Because in my private practice, I've noticed with women a lot with dating is that they'd be so dialed into not being rejected. Like, this was like the number one do all, top of the line. Like, I feel them pulling away. I don't want, you know, and I would be like, okay, but can we get clarity? Do we even like this guy? Do we even like this girl? Do we even like this person? Like, we're flipping out. Like, we can't treat all the people the same. Maybe this person isn't someone you should be so effing worried about if they're rejecting you. Do you like them? Do you respect them? Do you want to see them? Or are you so afraid of rejection that you're like, I don't want to be rejected by anybody, even if they're an idiot, even if you find out you don't even like them? Like, it's about you. What do you want? So it's not about, forget about drawing boundaries while you're dating. It's back to understanding who you are and what you want. That is your job. Understand how you relate in romantic relationships, unpacking your downloaded blueprint. You know what I mean? All of those things. And so many of them we did this week. It's about you knowing yourself. And you don't need to know with 100% certainty in the beginning of a relationship. Things can change, you know, and if you don't know 4 years in, okay, but that's something else. You know what I mean? Give yourself time. Let it develop. Give yourself permission to change your mind. You may think someone's great, and by the third date, be like, meh, I don't know. He did this mean thing to the waitress, or she did this mean thing to the waitress, and now I realize I don't like them. We don't know people. In the beginning, we're projecting what we hope is there, but we got to be looking for what is there, which is also why, side note, long way around the barn, you didn't even ask this, but I'm just going to say it, why I'm always like, hey, let's not have sex too fast. And not because I'm a prude. I'm not. It's because it complicates the getting to know process. And especially if someone is pressuring you in any way, shape, or form to do so. No, I'm going to take that as a bad sign if someone is pressuring you in that way. I had an 8-date rule. I think it's a 5-date rule is fine, or I don't know. I think 8 is nice. Because you know what? If on the 5th date, you're like, oh, this person revealed themselves as someone who is a bad fit for me, you are not going to regret not doing them on the 4th date. You will not. But if you do them on the 2nd date and you dislike them by the 5th date, you might be like, oh, look, I shared my sacred God pod with someone I'm never going to see again. You do not want to do that. All right, that's it. That's my soapbox. I'm done. And again, it is not a moral thing. it complicates things emotionally is why I say that. And, you know, you are a goddess. You're sacred. Like, treat yourself that way. You don't owe anyone that. Because I also noticed when I was, you know, with my private practice, that women would feel like, but they brought me to dinner and they did this and did that. I'm like, you're kidding me, right? You think you owe them something physical because it took you to dinner? You don't. Forget it. Go Dutch. Pay for your own dinner if that means you avoid doing whatever. I mean, I could get really gross. I'm not gonna, okay, because you guys are Canadian, but if you were Canadian, I might. You know what I'm saying? Is that, and it's probably not even a good saying to say, go Dutch. Is that like a non-PC saying? Split the bill is what I mean to say. I just realized. I have a whole list of things you're not allowed to say.
Allie,
all right, moving on.
Allie from New York is asking, sometimes for me, there's a fine line between I'm holding a boundary versus I'm feeling very emotionally flooded and I'm putting up a wall. How do you let down that wall and invite people back into your space in a healthy way?
Well, part of it is when you really become more of a boundary boss, you won't really be putting up that wall. You're putting up that wall because you feel overwhelmed. So you got to go back, right? All of this is about collecting data. What are the circumstances in the situation that you feel put you into that overwhelmed state? Who are the people that you're with, right? So start to be like, I noticed this happens more with these 3 people than it does with anyone else. I wonder why. What do they have in common? Where have I felt like this before? And this could also be a good place for you to be like, am I having a repeating, you know, I call it a repeating boundary reality, where someone may remind you of a punitive parent. You might be having a transference, and that could be overwhelming if you had a chaotic or an abusive or even just authoritarian childhood, you know? So once you figure out who it is, if you're in that situation and you feel yourself getting overwhelmed, give yourself permission to take a time out. Literally, you're getting heated, you're feeling, be like, hey, I need to pee, I'll be right back. Or, hey, anything, whatever, we need to pattern interrupt. It doesn't matter what it is. So it's okay to say, hey, can we put a pin in this? Because I'm feeling like heated. I'd rather come back to this tomorrow at this time. I want time to think about it. Give yourself permission to want time to think about something. How about it's okay to not know how you feel? It's okay, and it's very advisable to take a time out if the situation is becoming overwhelming for you. You know what, if the other person's like, what are you talking about? I didn't even do anything. What's wrong with you? You could be like, hey, you know what, Bob? I don't need you to understand at all what's going on for me. What I'm telling you is that we're picking this up tomorrow at this time because I am now taking a time out. Okay. Now, you guys probably wouldn't do it as mean as that, but if Bob was really pushy, I wish you would. But you could say, because people will always try to act like they need to understand what you're saying. They need to understand your boundary. They need to think it's a good idea. They don't. They don't have to understand. Your job is not to convince them. Listen, in good relationships with my husband, of course I want him to understand. I give context, not to convince him that I have a right, but because I want to be intimately known by him. I said to him the other day, stupid example, but I think it's a good example. Hey, I was like, you know, my People magazine is not here. I can't believe it. Do you think someone at the post office is reading it? I usually get it on the weekend. I really wanted it. It's a long weekend. I'm bummed out. I was like, you didn't leave it in the truck, did you? He's like, I don't think so. I don't know. Okay. I was like, all right. You haven't seen it though. No, I haven't seen it. Okay. So then Tuesday, he's like, oh, I found some mail in the truck. And I was like, hey, can you not leave mail in the truck? That was the People magazine I was looking for. So then he was like, okay, but I didn't explain it right. Like I just was sort of making him wrong, being like, hi, I asked you, you lied or didn't care, just, you know, with placating me. Later on, I said, listen, can I just tell you? The reason I really don't want you to leave mail in the truck is that sometimes stuff is time sensitive. And like over the weekend, I really wanted to read that People magazine. And I had 3 days and I really wanted to. And it was here the whole time. And he was like, all right. I was like, do you understand, my baby? He's like, I do, Terri, I do. I'm sorry. I'm like, okay. So I'm giving him context, not to drive home his wrongness, because it's not a crime. But I know if he understands why I'm asking him not to leave it in the truck, he'll be less likely to leave it in the truck. You understand what I'm saying? So I get my needs met more. So did I finish answering that question?
Yes.
Okay.
Such clear, honest communication. And like I think you're pointing out, Terry, it doesn't, in the moment, we often don't have the words or to say, but the next day you can of course bring that up, which I think is so smart and kind.
Yes, and people think that they can't bring it up. People are like, it's too late. It happened 5 months ago. I'm like, dude, I'll go back to, hey, Bob, remember in 1978 in April? Like, I do not give a shit. You can go back as far as you want. Hey, you know what is so weird? I was thinking about high school. Betty, I don't want us to talk to you about, I don't care. There's no statute of limitations. If you got something you got to say, and if they could be like, that's ridiculous, you're like, oh, hey, I didn't ask you for your opinion actually on what I'm saying. I just needed to tell you this.
Carrie from New Jersey has a
Oh,
question.
hi, Terri.
When friends go on a rant monologue,
Oh, so good.
complaining, how do I hold space without giving advice or sharing an observation or similar experience? They're not down with therapy language, and I can only say, I hear you, or that sucks so many times.
You know, my first thought, Carrie, like I hear you, but I'm actually meaning that I do. Is that here's the thing. Think about what you're getting out of being in this friendship with someone who is dumping on you and you're allowing them to dump on you. Who wants a friend who's continuing to go on a monologue? Do you, or do you feel obligated? Why aren't you taking up equal airtime? Or do you? Maybe you do, and I'm just misinterpreting the question. You got to decide how much space you want to hold for someone who's going to complain about the same shit for like 44 years and do nothing about it. How much, how long, and why? My feeling is not that long should be the answer to that. If you are working, if you are willing, if you are in pain, if you want to brainstorm, if you're saying, hey, I'm working on it, right? But a lot of these people, and the way you described that, Carrie, it was like someone who's just like, talk same shit, different day. And I got to tell you, don't waste your youth and your beauty on that. So anyway, I want you to try to think about if, your desire to fix is evident in what you said. You can't fix it, right? That's the reality, is that you can't fix whatever's going on with her. For me, when I got to the breaking point with people like this in my life, which of course I did at some point, I realized through the therapist's help that I was uncomfortable because they were uncomfortable. I just couldn't wait to fix their problem. I wanted their uncomfortable to go away, or their pain, so that my uncomfortable and my pain could go away, because I'm an empath. Is that like super loving? No. I was like, I just want to tie it up in a neat bow so we could stop talking about it. So my thought is, I want you to think about, if you are like that, maybe. When I got to that point myself, I would say, I really don't know what you should do, but I do have faith that you will figure it out, because you're the only one who can. It's your life, and we've talked about this quite a bit. So I don't really think I have anything valuable to add, although I love you, but let's talk about something else. Like, there has to be a statute of limitation on someone just talking about the same shit all the time or complaining all the time. I've just distanced myself from people like that, because I'm like, they love their misery more than they love our friendship, more than they love themselves. Like, they're super into their misery. It's exhausting. I don't have bandwidth. And when you're a fixer, even, a codependent, even if you're in, recovery from it, it's very tempting to want to be like, I have a great idea for you, even now. I mean, I've been working on this for fucking 30 years, and I still want to be like, have you thought of? And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm fixing this person's problem. Stop it. If you wanted other language, though, I did come up with a whole bunch of things you could say after I told you all that. I'm interested to hear what you think you should do. I would always put it back on the other person. I'm sorry you're going through that. What a crappy situation to be in. I'm sorry. That's tough. How can I best support you right now? I'm not sure what to say. How about I don't know. I really don't know. Because the thing is, when we continue to give them, there's this weird exchange of energy with people who are like chronic complainers. That was someone who was like the perennial sunshine one, or the fixer, that even though they're not changing, they get off the phone with you and they're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. You get off the phone with them and you feel like someone just barfed all over you, because they did. So you have to decide how long you're going to let someone barf on you. You know, I feel like don't, because you don't need to. And you can still be a good friend and be like, I don't know, but I know I have faith in you. I know you're going to figure it out, which also stops your codependent interaction with them.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Terri, we have time for one last question.
Great.
From Usted. My ex and I gave ourselves some time apart to focus on ourselves. What is a good way to reconnect in a healthy way so that we can get to know each other again?
Why don't you date? Why don't you literally date and have it be a whole thing around dating, as long as you're not sheltering in place, you know, as long as you're allowed to see the person, or start with Zoom dates. Like, do it slow. Then you can decide, you can do fun things like getting to know you things, like questions that you've never asked each other. Danielle, my girlfriend, Danielle Laporte. Oh yeah, Danielle. She has this great thing called Conversation Starters. It's an app, and there's so many good questions on there. And maybe you and your person could just start answering those, ask each other those questions. And I guarantee you will learn something you didn't know about each other.
I think that's beautiful advice. Terri, before we close, I know you had said something about the new course that you're launching.
Yes.
Please tell us all about that.
Okay, well, first of all, I have a gift for you guys, which is go to terricole.com/gift. And that gives you two of my favorite gifts, which is the Raise Your Love Vibe Challenge and the More Love Starter Kit. Plus, you'll be added to my list to be the first to know about the next course I'm doing with Mark Groves, who happens to be the groovy keynote next week. You guys are spending it with cutie Mark. So we're doing a course together because we're both obsessed about crushing codependency and teaching people how to crush codependency. So that will be coming up in July. That course, we'll be launching it and starting it in July. We're so excited. We're actually filming it next week, which is going to be amazing. I also have Boundary Bootcamp season, which will be coming up. It starts about August, where there's a whole bunch of free weeks that I do, just drilling down on boundaries. And that leads into the launch of my Boundary Bootcamp course, which starts mid-September. So there's a whole bunch of things that'll be happening. But once you get on my list, you'll know all about them. This was so much fun. I loved it. Robin, thank you for you guys pulling it all together. It's been so great.
This was so much fun, Terri. I'm so grateful for you. I know myself how much I've learned from you since we met. This week was transformational, and just the feedback we've been receiving, the wisdom and the way that you teach is just it's very practical, right? And you are a therapist. It's like we're all getting our own private therapy with Terri Cole virtually. It's amazing. So thank you so much for helping us learn how to create clear boundaries for ourselves and in all of our relationships. You're
so welcome.
Boundaries allow us to know ourselves and know each other. And you can't have real love without really explicit and healthy boundaries. You're such an amazing woman, teacher, therapist. It's funny because yesterday I was talking with my colleague Peyton, and she said she's been following and applying your principles, and she's really just seen a huge transformation in herself. And it's like virtual relationship therapy, thanks to you.
I love it. So happy. Thank you guys for all your beautiful words. I see you. I appreciate you. And thank you for putting this together. Hiitide and Robin, the whole thing has just been a beautiful experience. And it makes me so happy to know that you guys are doing it, because, the healthier we are, the better the world is. So thank you, Robin, and all of you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Terri. I'm going to close us off with a blessing written with your wise words, Terri. May we prioritize learning to draw healthy boundaries. May we learn to speak our truth with ease and grace and kindness and love. And may we see that healthy love is boundaried love. Blessings to you. Blessings to everybody. Good night.
I love that. Good night. Bye, you guys.